Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I'm Dino. You know, if you've ridden your motorcycle or snowmobile, or in this case ATV, for any length of time, or maybe you've left it out in the elements for a while, there's a good chance you may have to face a seat that looks like this at some point in your ownership. Now, there's a couple things that a person can do to remedy this. You could buy a new seat. You could take it in and have it professionally reupholstered, or you can do what I'm going to do in today's episode and attempt to reupholster it yourself. So why don't you sit back, grab yourself something warm to drink, and enjoy Dino's Tinker Shed. You're definitely going to want to park your seat for this episode. Over the years, I have owned several different pieces of power sports equipment that have required seat covers, whether it be a motorcycle, snowmobiles, or like this, an ATV seat. I've had very good success reupholstering snowmobile seats here at home with the help of my son-in-law. We've probably done 2 or 3 seats over the past 5 or 6 years, and each time we've gotten better at it, more comfortable with it, and they look really good when they're done. Now, those seat covers were specific to the different model of snowmobile that we had, and they were custom fit and stitched, all paneled together, and when you put them on, it was fairly easy to get them centered up and then stapled in and get a really fantastic job when you're done. When it comes to ATVs, I have always taken them over to the professionals here in Niagara Falls at Streamline, and they've done a great job of reupholstering these for a reasonable price. But when my friend asked me to reupholster this seat off of a 2004 or 2005 Yamaha Bruin that he has, I thought I'd give it a shot. I'm pretty confident that I can do this at home. Now, the thing with ATV seats, at least the ones that I've owned, is they tend to have a one-piece marine grade 4-way stretch vinyl cover on them. So they're more waterproof, they're very streamlined, but I've always found them to be a little intimidating in the fact that you sort of stretch the fabric to get it to fit to all of the contours on the seat. And I've always been a little concerned that it might not look as good as the custom seats that I've had experience with in the past. However, my friend really is more concerned about just protecting the foam that's underneath here than he is about it looking factory grade. So I'm going to do it here for about $35, I think it was, for the seat cover, Canadian. Now, the foam on this isn't in the best of condition. It's been exposed a little bit and it's got some fissures through it. However, this bike is really going to be to teach his kids how to ride four-wheelers and give them their first experience in the ATV world. So I think for this test anyway, we're going to keep the foam the way it is and get our practice in on actually just reupholstering. This video is, of course, about an ATV seat, but the principles are very similar if you're doing your motorcycle seat or your snowmobile seat, so it might be of interest to you to stick around. And it really doesn't matter what brand here. We're really talking about how to reupholster one of these seats at home. I'm going to tell you right up front, I am not a professional at this, so I might make a few mistakes along the way, and when I do, or if I do, I'll certainly point those out to try and help you not make those mistakes yourself. So why don't we sort of get the camera up top, and we'll start now. Before I get too much further, I really think it's important to check to make sure that the seat cover that you get is the right seat cover. And especially, like I said, for this ATV seat where it really isn't a form-fitting seat cover, it's just a piece of fabric essentially. So I ordered this off of Amazon and I think it was around $35 or $39 plus tax Canadian. It was shipped in a simple box like this, and really there wasn't anything else in it other than the seat cover. There isn't even instructions. Again, this is this four-way stretch, and you can see it really does stretch a lot. Marine grade fabric. I'm just going to throw it over and see how it fits. Now it does a double reinforcement layer on one end. I'm thinking that's probably what fits up around the gas tank area, and it then the sort of wider area obviously goes to the back here. On first glance, it doesn't seem like it's quite big enough, but then I remembered this needs to be stretched, and if I start stretching it, I can get several inches out of it lengthwise and probably the same the other way. So I'm pretty confident that this is going to be enough material. The key, I think, will be to make sure it's centered, and it does have a center line down here where it was folded. Start on the front end, I believe, staple the back, and then work my way around the seat. It shouldn't really be all that hard, but the first thing I need to do is get all the old staples out and clean up the seat pan. So I'll show you a little bit on how I do that, but most of it will be off camera. The first thing we need to do with the seat cover is flip it open and take a look at the back here where the seat pan is. The way these covers are held in place, there's a series of staples that go all the way around and pull that seat cover tight. This particular seat has a latch back here that we're going to need to remove before we do anything else, so that we can get access to the staple line that's held in place and behind it. Now this is specific obviously to this seat, but you never know, depending on the model and the make, how your seat is attached and whether it'll interfere with the seat cover or not. For this, I'm simply going to remove this spring, and then I believe there's a little spot here that I'm going to pry up on the plastic, and that pin should slide over, and then I'll be able to pull that out. Again, yours is probably different. This just happens to be how this one works. So I'm going to do that first, and then we'll come back and start pulling out staples. There are a couple ways you can start this. One is you could run an X-Acto knife all the way around and get the vast majority of the seat cover off. I'm going to try to do it just by prying these out. I'm going to use a few things. I'm going to use some screwdrivers, just some flat-bladed screwdrivers of varying thicknesses, some needle nose pliers, and maybe some side cutters here just to help grip and pull out those staples. And I'm also going to try this nail lifting tool here, maybe get underneath and pry those out. So I'm going to do a little bit of that right now and see what we can accomplish. A little tip someone told me years ago that seems to work pretty good is to take a piece of paper towel like this and lay it in one of these magnetic parts trays. Then you can take all your staples and put them in there. They don't end up all over your floor. They're contained, and when you're done, you just basically fold up the paper towel, wrap it up like a little present, and throw it in the garbage. It works good. I like this, and I don't use it just for staples, but other stuff like this as well. Here you can see the size of the staple. It looks like it's about a 1/4 inch thick, and I don't even think it's a T50. It seems thinner than that. I'm going to use 1/4 inch T50 staples when I put this back together, but this just shows you the size of the factory staple. As that photo shows, you can see that these corners up at the very front, the gas tank would fit here. Definitely these corners are stapled in the middle first, and then tightened up and folded over top like a package. I'll have to remember that when I start reupholstering. Is I think you're supposed to start in the center here and then probably pull these corners tight and tack them on either side like this, and then you start to fold these back in. I'll have to keep an eye on that when I get back to reupholstering. Before you can begin to actually attach your new seat cover, you need a way to do that. And that way is with a stapler. Many of us have a stapler like this. This one happens to be a JT21 stapler, so the staples are a little bit smaller. And I think if you really had to, you could probably reupholster with one of these, but I don't think your experience is going to be all that good. What I would recommend is either an electric T50 stapler, or like what I have here, which is a T50 upholstery stapler that's air powered. What makes these a much nicer experience is not just the fact that it's either air or electric powered, but rather the tip on it sticks out quite a ways, and this is going to allow you to get into all the little nooks and crannies that the stapler needs to get into. A standard hand activated stapler really has a 90-degree curve here and can be a little bit more difficult to negotiate, especially considering you have to squeeze that handle in to make this work. So if you're going to take on a project like this, you're already going to save a few $100s versus taking it to a shop. So for the $40 or $50 that you're going to spend on an air stapler, you have this tool for your life. And if you happen to have a compressor, of course, it's a handy tool that you use for other things. I've used it for putting up vapor barrier, just all kinds of different tasks you may not know you need a stapler like this for. Now that you've got your stapler, it's time to start reupholstering. And just before I do that, I know I only paid $35 or $40 for this seat cover. It's not a $300 or $400 seat cover. I still want to protect that surface as I work on it. So I'm going to take this old beach towel here and I'm going to lay it on top of the work surface to protect that seat cover from any random things that I may have missed when I cleaned it. It also provides a nice grippy surface for the seat cover to grab onto. I'm going to start by laying the seat cover upside down, and this particular one has that reinforcement layer. That is going to be the front of the seat, where the seat horn is that faces the gas tank. With the seat cover laid out, you can see that there's a natural center line on it. And I'm going to just mark that with a pencil on the front and back so it'll help me position the seat and keep the piece of fabric straight along here. Now I can lay this down and center it with the seat pan roughly. And again, this is going to be stretched. So I want to start in the center here on the center of the horn. I'm going to tell you again, there's no instructions with this. I've read a few different things about how to do this. Some people say to put a garbage bag, cut it to size and fit it against the foam. And that allows the seat cover fabric to stretch a little bit easier over the foam itself. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to try without putting the garbage bag on there. But I'm going to start by taking the center part and putting a staple in to hold it along the old staple line, and then I'll stretch the back fabric and see if I can't get it around and fastened on this side. So let's start working on that. It really looks like this is going to stretch around here really well. I can bring this in and put a little tack in there. There we go, get right in there. Let's just have a look and see. So this will all get pulled tight. I think this is gonna work. I'm gonna switch back over and then pull these corners in up at the front here and see. I'll just work away at this and you can kind of watch. I think this is going to work out pretty good. That seam down the center should just stretch its way out. And I'm going to move from the front, or sorry, from the front here to the back and from the back to the front, rotating where I'm stapling to make sure that I keep this thing as symmetrical as possible. I think next I'm going to start working my way down here and see if I can't get this a little bit tighter. As you go, you try to stretch the fabric down to get it nice and smooth, and I think overall this is looking pretty good. But I'm trying to pull any loose material down to the edges before I pull that tight, and then come in and hit it with a couple tacks. And that is now that. I've got this seat cover looking pretty good. Considering the foam wasn't perfect under there, there's very few ripples in it. And I've let this sit out in the shop here in the heat for about 2 hours, and it just seems to continue to form a little bit around that shell and looks better every time I come out and look at it. There are some things I probably could do better when I do the next ATV seat, or maybe my DR650. The staple line that I put in wasn't quite as straight as it could have been, and it's definitely nowhere close to the factory staple line. Now, I'm pretty sure that the factory uses a robot or some kind of a machine to make that perfectly straight staple line. But I did find it, even with my air stapler, a little bit challenging to get into some of those spots and get the staple straight. So some of them are a little bit crooked. I don't think it's going to impact anything other than my OCD. The other thing is, I did end up with a little bit of extra fabric when I pulled things taut. And I probably could have went around with a razor knife and trimmed that up a little bit. But when I test fit it back onto the ATV, that extra bulk didn't seem to affect the way this thing fit. So instead of trimming it, I just simply folded it back down and sort of fastened a second staple line with that extra fabric in some spots. My thinking is it's just going to add some extra security and some extra strength to those staples that are holding the fabric on. Overall, this was a relatively simple project, and I think most people out there with an electric or air-powered staple gun could do this themselves if you just take your time. The cost involved is under $50 for me because I have the tools and I didn't need to replace any of the foam, as opposed to my friend Carl that just had his DR650 seat redone. It was around $200. So I've saved probably around $150 to $170 doing this myself, which is enough money to buy the staple gun and even a small compressor if you needed it. So would I recommend people at home to do this? Absolutely. I think it's an easy project to do for your motorcycle, your snowmobile, or your ATV like this to get extra life out of it. And I would suggest doing it before your foam deteriorates too much. Okay, I'm going to get this back out onto the bike and think about getting the carburetor off of it next so I can get that cleaned. I really do appreciate you stopping by, and if you did enjoy the video today, please consider subscribing and liking the video and even sharing it if you like. I really do like to watch the channel grow, as I've told you before, and the way that's done really best is through word of mouth. Okay, until next time, you have a great day, and I'll see you later, and remember, tinker easy. Bye for now.